Welcome back to the Create From Rest podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Fehrenbach, and today is Wednesday, June 3rd. As I record this, my kids are actually outside enjoying the sunshine that has been missing for the last couple of weeks as we have endured day after day after day of rain. So we are all quite happy right now to see some sunshine. This technically episode 55 of the podcast, but it is the very first episode in this new direction of the podcast. Now, the heart of this podcast has not changed. If you haven't had a chance to listen to the last episode where I explain why we have made this transition in the name from the business of Christian fiction to Create From Rest, moving from that idea of talking about publishing to talking about that bigger concept of creative stewardship, I encourage you to go listen to that episode. But that's where we're headed, that we are talking more holistically, more deeply about what does it mean to create, to cultivate, to grow things from a place of rest. When you are a Christian creative, you can end up really in one of two camps. Sometimes you might swing between the two camps, but the conversations that I typically hear either fall on the side of hustling, like we've just got to work harder, we've got to build the bigger platform, we've got to get the better contract, we have to sell them more books, we have to do more things, yada, yada, yada. Or you can end up into the other side where it's about being still and letting go and letting God and really kind of going into this this place of always kind of starting but never really getting going because we want to protect our peace and we want to just make sure that we are stepping in God's will. And if God wanted it to happen, he would open a door even without us like hustling. And so there are like these very two extreme conversations. The first can be very dangerous because it can take stewardship language. God's given you a gift. He's given you a calling. You need to take care of that. You need to tend to it, grow it. And it can lead to this hustling, this grinding it out, getting things done, keep going at it because more will produce more, this idea. And it can almost lead to being a workaholic. It can lend itself to burning yourself out, just all those different things. The second can be just as dangerous because even though we use phrases like protecting our peace or giving ourselves grace or taking care of ourselves, self-care, soul care, whatever you want to call it, depending on God, surrendering to God, we can use a lot of fancy words and a lot of fancy phrases. And what's the danger in this is that sometimes it sounds holy, but we can actually excuse our way out of building or doing the thing that God has actually called us to. We become like that servant in Jesus' parable where he just buries the talent instead of investing in it. And so it's like we have to be really careful with both sides of this. We can go to the extreme of constantly trying to do things in our own strength from that extreme to constantly being so worried about not doing things in our own strength that we sometimes are moved to inaction. I personally have been in both of these camps at different times. I tend to, and I think most people probably who are creatives tend to fall more one way or the other. And I'm a doer. And so you give me a to-do list, I will knock it out. You give me a really beautiful Excel sheet, I'm gonna follow that thing to a T. So sometimes I have fallen into the hustle trap, this thought that if I just dig down deep enough, if I just get the right planner, if I just create the right content calendar, I will grow and this thing is going to get big enough and I'm going to make the sales and I'll be successful. I haven't brought myself to a place of burnout in this creative work, but 9 years ago, I was in a place of burnout because I was doing all the right things for all the good reasons, but I was trying it in my own strength. And I was actually not even doing any of the creative work that God was actually calling me to. And I was really exhausted during that time. Like, I was just not in a good place. I was burned out. And so I would say that I tend to go towards that side, but as a course correction in recent years, because I know what it was like to be burned out, and I know what I was like during that time, and I'm like, "I don't ever wanna get like that again." I was not a very happy person. I was very short-tempered during that time, and I'm like, "I don't," and I'm not a very optimistic person, and during that time of burnout, I was not. Pessimism was like my middle name during that time. It was so bizarre. But when you're not operating from a place of rest, true rest, we'll talk about that in a minute. That's what happens, because when you're hustling and you're grinding it out and you're trying to white knuckle it your way through everything, it's just, it's not good. You're not operating how you've been designed to operate. But then in fear of that, there have been times where life has been a little bit rough. We've gone through some really challenging times in the last 7 years. And people have said to me, "Oh, you're being too hard on yourself. Maybe your expectations are too big right now." And I would get fearful that maybe I was trying to strive my way and I was trying to hustle too much. And so I almost swung to the opposite side where I would resist doing stuff because I wanted to prove to myself that I wasn't hustling. It's so like the mental Olympics we do to ourselves sometimes is just so bizarre. But I wanted to make sure I was giving myself, that I was being kind to myself, that I wasn't putting too much expectation on myself or being too much of a perfectionist. And I did that to the point where I almost avoided the work that I was meant to do, and didn't move ahead in certain things. Specifically, I can think of a year ago, 2 years ago, I should say, I knew I was meant to write Image of the Invisible, which was my novel that just released last July. I knew I was supposed to write that book, and I had known for a while. God was making it very clear to me. But we had a personal thing that happened in our personal lives, and it was weighing on me. And so even though I had in a plan to work on my book and I had all the time set aside for it, I was like, well, I need to give myself grace. I need to rest. I need to this. I need to that. And I did not move forward on that book. And because I dragged my feet on that, it made it harder for myself when I did finally decide to stop being fearful of being productive and start actually executing on it. And I'm not saying that anybody who falls into what I would probably call, like, if not hustle culture, it's like stillness culture, that be still, be let go and let God. Um it's not, neither side is without truth, I guess you could say. Like, there's truth that you do need to show up and do the work that the hustle culture talks about. Like, there is a reality in that. You do need to show up and do the work. On the other side, there is a reality of letting go and letting God, but not to the point where you aren't doing the work at all. And so there's these two extremes. Neither one of them are good. One of the other things that with the stillness, this idea of being still or letting go and letting God, that I see show up for creatives in particular, is that they get caught in this idea of like, oh, I'm not going to do a whole lot of investing or a whole lot of selling my thing or a whole lot of like effort in marketing. And now I'm talking specifically about like creatives who have a craft that they're trying to sell. Um, if it just reaches one person, that's fine. I'm happy with that. And while that sounds really like good, like a place of rest, sometimes I think hiding beneath that is this idea of, I don't want to put too much marketing effort into it because then I might be hustling. And so I don't want to hustle. And so I'm just going to be content that if just one person is reached. But that, I don't think what God has asked us to do. I think he wants us to try to reach as many people as we can without hustling. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Both sides of this conversation feel true in the moment. But the reality is God hasn't asked us to do either one of them. He hasn't asked us to do either one of these extremes. What he has asked us to do is to create from a place of rest. And rest is not a thing we do. It's not self-care that we activate. It's not even a practice of Sabbath. That's not what I'm talking about. Rest, true rest, creating from rest is a posture. It's a posture of dependence. He does not ask us to hustle our way into success, nor does he require us to just sit still and do nothing. What he asks us to do is steward the life that he has entrusted to us. Just think about it. In Genesis chapter 1 and 2, where God creates the entire world, he creates the garden, he creates humanity, and then he puts humanity into the garden to do what? To work it, to tend to it, to create, to cultivate, to grow things. Like, this is imprinted in our very DNA. Like, we are designed to create. We are designed to bring order out of chaos, to bring beauty forth, to bring goodness into the world. That is our divine directive. God placed Adam and Eve in the garden, and he says to them, I have given you all that you need, all the food that you need, all the plants to eat from. He lets them know that there's literally a feast around them. They didn't have to work in order to have security with food or shelter or all that. They were partnering with God in his creative work. They were entrusted with stewardship, and that in the creating, in the partnering with God, they were reflecting his divine nature. They were reflections of him. That's what they were called to, was called to reflect him through the creative process. My mind gets blown every time I think about that. Just what a beautiful invitation we have been given. But he didn't put them to work right away. He had them rest with him. And then he establishes this rhythm of Sabbath, right? Working 6 days and resting the seventh day. And I personally think that he does this to remind them, you are not working because you need to work to something, to work towards security, but because you are already secure, I have already provided for all your needs, you join in the work that I've already begun. And I think God extends the same invitation and reminder to us. And that's what it means to create from rest. To create from a posture of dependence on the Lord, to create from a posture of just believing that he has your every need already planned out. This posture of, I work not towards security, but I work from a place of security, because the God that I partner with in this work has already provided for me. But if we notice, he didn't say to Adam and Eve, I've given you this whole garden to eat. I've given you everything you need. You guys can just sit back and relax. Or even just like, take a little bit of break. Don't be so hard on you. No, he had them show up to the work, because the work was not the curse. Work was never a curse. Working with God was the invitation. It was the way in which we get to live out our divine image bearer identities. And so I think that when we are talking about creating from rest, we have to first go back to that idea of stopping long enough to remind ourselves it doesn't depend on us. It's not on our shoulders. And when we do that, we can push against the hustle culture where we think we have to just grind it out. And we also can push against that stillness culture where we're not doing the things we need to do the work we've been called to. I think that for me, over the last 7 years, this has been a slow move towards this, where at first I had to learn how to rest with God. When 7 years ago, we started practicing a 24-hour Sabbath, not from a legalistic perspective. I do not believe it has anything to do with my salvation. I always feel like I need to clarify that when I talk about Sabbath, but not because I feel it adds to my salvation, but because it's wisdom. And it's a weekly practice that reminds me that I am not God. I am not the big creator. I'm just a small creator who has been designed to reflect him. And so that weekly practice helps me stay in that right headspace. When you practice a weekly rest, weekly stopping of work, you kind of have to define what work is. And so for me as a stay-at-home mom with 3 kids who I homeschool while also running 2 businesses, um, that was really hard to define. What part gets to be stopped on the day that on our Sabbath day and what stuff continues. And I think identifying that week after week has given me a better understanding that my whole life is meant to be stewarded. Every aspect of my life is to be tended to. Some days we make actions that bring forth fruit, and then once a week we get to really just step back and enjoy that fruit. Having that framework it's been life-changing because it's brought peace. It's brought a lot of peace because in those moments where I start to panic and think I'm not doing enough, I'm not good enough, I can't make this happen, I'm reminded, yeah, that's absolutely 100% true. You aren't enough and you aren't able to do enough because you're not God, and that's okay. And so all he's asked you to do is show up to the work, do what you can, and trust that he will do with that what he wants. He can multiply that into something beautiful and bigger than you could ever imagine, or he can just use that small gift. It's up to him. And so I think that having that right perspective changes everything. It brings such a peace, but it also brings a responsibility because a steward is not meant to just bury his talent in the sand so that it doesn't go away. He's meant to invest it, to do something with it. And so, um, this idea of stewardship touching every aspect of my life, but not just touches every aspect, that there's a proper flow for that too. That's something that we're going to touch on in future episodes. But every aspect of our lives has an opportunity to bring order from chaos. Because and I don't know about your life, but my life at times seems extremely chaotic. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see behind me, my office is in a chaotic state. We're in the midst of trying to overcome some organizational challenges, to say the least. And so like it's just a mess. But I think it's kind of funny that I'm recording this podcast in the midst of a little bit of chaos because my schedule for recording, I have ordered that and it is now in a place of, it was in a place of chaos, but we have kind of brought it together. But my time to work on my office, that has yet to be ordered. And so we will get there. We will get this office into shape. It'll be interesting. You watch along as the episodes go on. We'll see how long this takes us. You might see this very chaotic background for a bit here before we actually get it into some kind of working order. Part of it's because part of ordering and bringing forth beauty and all those things is home decorating. That is one area of stewardship that I am a little bit less strong in. So I keep floundering on what exactly I want to do to this space to bring beauty out of it and to bring order. So, but all of that to say, stewardship is more than just taking care of the work that produces an income or my art. Like I know sometimes we have creative stewardship in like for those of us who are creatives, an actual like place of art, of creating art. And sometimes that doesn't always make us money, but we might use it in different ways to still serve others and better the world around us through it. But even that, stewardship moves beyond just that. It's a part of it. It's a very important part of it. And we'll talk about that flow, like how does stewardship flow in our lives in other episodes too. But for today, where I want to land this episode is that I don't want you to walk right away from this thinking that I have this all figured out. I don't. I I think I've come a very long way over the last 7 years. Our life, my family, our lives are I feel so privileged that I get to live it. Like, it has taken a lot of intentional choices, and it has taken a lot of sacrifice, and my life does not look like everybody else's. It just doesn't. It doesn't look normal, for whatever that's worth, and yet it is the most beautiful thing, and I'm so honored that I get to live it and steward it. I'm so honored that I get to take care of this thing that has been entrusted to me, and, every week, it's just like a constant surrender, a surrender of, "Lord, I hope I'm doing this okay. I hope I'm making the wise choices that you want me to make, and I hope I'm doing the stewardship thing well. Please help me when I'm not." That's literally every week a prayer of mine. But our lives have just gotten to such a place of peace and joy, and it's not without its challenges. Like, we have so much that can still go on in any given week. But at the core of it, I know that we're in God's will. We're where we're supposed to be at. We're serving the communities that we're supposed to serve. We're creating and the work that we're supposed to create. We are cultivating a life. We are growing in our relationships with each other, my husband and I, and with our kids, and with friends and family. All of those things are true. And I I'm so grateful that I get to live this life. So I want to give you a question to meditate on, to reflect on throughout the week. As you approach a creative task, whether that's writing, recording a podcast, making a social media post, maybe it's nothing to do with those things. Maybe it's you're about to walk into a ministry meeting, or you're cutting up something for a committee that you're on. When you go to start doing that task, that activity that you're involved in, and it doesn't even have to be a creative endeavor. It doesn't have to do with work. Anything that you're doing, as you move about your life this week, I want you to ask yourself, is what I'm doing right now, am I doing it from a place of security, knowing that I'm already taken care of, or is it because I'm trying to earn that security? Am I resting in who God is, who He's designed me to be, what He's called me to do, trusting Him with the outcomes? Or do I feel like I have to work towards some level of success to earn rest? You don't have to try to fix anything right now. Just notice. Just take some time, ask yourself that question, and just be honest with it. And if you want a practical tool to help you identify what you have filled up your life with and what you are carrying, maybe because you're striving towards security or towards success or whatever you want to call it, I have created a guide. It's called the 15-minute margin method, and it's free. The link is in the show notes, so make sure to go grab your copy of it. So to just wrap up, when I say we are talking about creating from rest, I am talking about a posture, not an activity, not a thing to do, not a goal to hit, not a standard to reach. It is a posture of dependence on the Lord. And from that, we make decisions. From that, we structure our days. From that, we function within this beautiful framework that the Lord has given us. From that, we do what we've been designed to do, which is create with Him and rest with Him. And so before we leave, I want to pray this over all of us. Through our lives and our creative stewardship, may your kingdom come, Lord Jesus. Amen. I'll see you next week.